right, anybody who's been watching my channel knows that when it comes to models, my favorite models of all are the original Aurora monsters, and that's what we're going to be building this time. Dr. Jekyll as Mr. Hyde, and a little bit about that later. So again, this is based on the the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which was written by Robert Louis Stevenson. Way back in 1886, and there's so many editions of the book, as there are movies, which I'll talk about in a second. And if you can, I have a copy somewhere around the house. I can't find it right now, but if you can, find the James Bama cover, which is the best cover for it. James Bama, for people who don't know, he's the artist who originally did all the Aurora monster box art. And it's, amazing stuff on its own. But he really outdid himself when he did the painting for one of the versions of the novel that came out. So if you can find that one, that was the one that I read as a kid way back when. One of my cousins had it. I borrowed it and I just devoured it. So really cool story, really cool model. But again, there's also a lot of movies of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Literally probably dozens. The classic ones are these two over here, the Frederick March one from 1932 and the Spencer Tracy one from 1941. Both really good movies. The only two I've seen, well, more about that later, but these two classic Jekyll and Hyde movies are the ones that you can't go wrong with if you can watch both. But like I said, there's many, many movies out there. As a matter of fact, when I went on YouTube just to see the different ones that you can watch for free, freely available to viewing, I found 6 other versions of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I'll put them all the notes in my notes. I'll put links in my notes so you can watch those ones for free. And I'll be watching them this week, or as I'm building this model to catch up on that stuff. And again, I watch those movies also for ideas of what I want to do with the kit. Again, more of that later. Now, it's such a popular title that Hammer Horror, the studio that Drip Blood, one of my favorite movie studios from the 60s and 70s where they put out horrors, they actually did 2 versions. They did Jekyll and Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and they did a Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. And again, I really recommend that second version. As zany as it sounds, it's really a great movie. So catch that one if you can. So let's open up this very thin box, but very long box, and see what's inside and what I'm going to be doing to this model as I build it. Yeah, I've learned not to do the unboxing on video because it always sticks on me, which it did this time. But I've only loosened it. I haven't looked at it, so I'm seeing this for the first time as you are. Okay, here's some clear. So these are flasks. There's 2 bottles and some test tubes. Now this is a very minimal kit. It's quite small. Like you can see here, the figure is, that's his lab coat. So the whole figure is going to be about that high. Very, small, especially given the box over here. And here's his face. Not too bad detail. And here's the base. And that's really what I want to talk about, because it's a very small kit that basically has the figure itself, a table with some apparatus, and a chair, and a rat, and the nameplate. But again, I can't just leave it at that, especially for this subject matter. I like putting, add-ons to these kits, and I will be doing so. This is the, what the kit looks like when you build it. But again, I've got to do a lot more with this kit than that. I'm going to make basically the corner of a room. So I'm going to have a much larger floor base, and then I'm going to have 2 walls, and I really want to create like a vintage lab, or as close to it as I can, Gothic lab, if you want to call it that. So aside from actually having a bigger room, I'm going to be doing probably wooden floorboards, and I was thinking of some wallpaper ideas. And these are nice and clean, but once it's in the diorama I'm going to be building, these are all dirty and scuffed up, and a lot of it's going to be hidden because I'm going to be adding things like a bookcase, Again, I mentioned the blackboard, maybe a fireplace. I was thinking of maybe making a bigger table and adding apparatus, but I might be putting the apparatus on the table, sorry, on the bookshelf itself. So I'll see if I really need to make a bigger table. And I was thinking, gas or candlelight to light up the room or somewhere along those lines. So I got a lot of ideas of what I want to put in here and a lot of things I'm going to be trying out. And hopefully it'll look as nice as when I did the bride, which is the Bride of Frankenstein, which is basically my best video by far. Like I got most views from that one. So with any luck, it'll be just as nice and just as decorative as that. Now again, I mentioned one thing about this model that I only recently noticed, and it's not Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's Dr. Jekyll as Mr. Hyde. And again, there were many versions of this. Repop from the Auroras. This is a Moebius kit from, I believe, 2007. But basically, the contents are the same. The kit hasn't changed all that much other than having different boxes. So I'm going to get cracking right now. Alright, so I've done a lot of work on the model that's not shown over here because I really want to talk about some other things. But while I'm at it, I just want to mention one thing about this model is that the face is quite detailed, as you can see over here. I'm happy with that. But he had actually no ear definition at all. It was all flat. So I tried to add a little definition there with some epoxy. I'll probably have to go in and do another round just to give him a little something. Now, one thing I did not mention in the previous section is that I mentioned there's a whole bunch of films, but really the figure in this kit over here, this Dr. Jekyll is the closest, movie rendition is the Frederick March version over here. And just to be sure, I've taken upon myself to watch a whole bunch of those movies I mentioned last time, including some other ones. So I've actually watched 6 Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or variants this week. The 4 I mentioned last time, and the other one I watched was the Jack Palance one, which I think it was I mentioned there's a YouTube video for that one. And I also watched one that I regret not mentioning. I really should have mentioned is the Abbott and Costello meets Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a comedy, obviously, and very funny. And they're all great movies. I really recommend it. And I didn't explain the concept behind Jekyll and Hyde, but I was talking to somebody earlier today, a younger person, and they had no idea what I was talking about, so which kind of surprised me. But then again, just go on YouTube, watch one of the videos or whatever you use for your streaming sources. You'll find a whole bunch of these movies, and so far I still think that these two are the best. And if I had to choose one, I would go with the original Frederick March one. Great fun. But let's talk about all the stuff I have on the table over here, and it's all the added decor. Because again, in this particular model, all they give you is this one little table. Well, it's not even shown over here, but that one little table, this little table, and a few things to put on it. And I'm not happy with that. I want, a full-blown lab, especially because I'm going to have the corner of a whole room. So I was looking actually at those movies for a lot of references of what I can add that you would typically see in, this Dr. Jekyll's lab. And I got a whole bunch of ideas. Now, I mentioned I had some glass vials, and I'm going to be adding more as I did with the Bride of Frankenstein. And this is my last true, glass spherical one. But you go in a dollar store and you'll find these other ones like this one over here, which is pretty good. It's looks more like a flask. Then there's some that are more like jars and bottles, but again, they're fine and they'll do the job, especially if you mix and match and get a whole bunch of them, as I did over here. They're readily available. There's also different sizes sometimes with, like this one over here that has like sparkles in there. But again, I just want the bottle, so it's different from all of these. So I'll be using those. But speaking back again, the lab itself, what I'm trying to do is like that chemist setup where you have all these rods that interconnect, that hold test tubes, hold flasks, bottles, and they have all the tubing in between, and usually there's smoke and bubbling liquids going through all that stuff. And I'm hoping to recreate some of that. And I was thinking, well, how can I do that? And at first I was thinking, oh, maybe I can just build my own setup with like, metal rods, but that'd be, I mean, not that hard, but it's doable. But then I said, I can actually use some sprue over here and just take like old sprue from, older models and, clean it up. And then in between, add wherever I want the interconnects. And then it'll give me a lot of flexibility too when I'm trying to decide how to place all this bottles and things. So I'm going to go with that. And one thing I'd like to do is, and you see it almost in every movie, is aside from that setup, you'll see kind of a coil that is used to, liquids are going through it to basically aerate it or have it bubble through. And I was thinking of using this over here. And what this is, it's a thick, rubbery kind of a thread. Now it's not rigid, so I can't place it and have it stand in place. But I'm thinking of doing something like this where I put it on a form and then either use PVA or some other glue that it'll settle in like that, and then I can slide it off and use it. So I'll have to do a little experimentation with that. And again, for the tubes itself, I do have some of these tubes, different thicknesses, and maybe I can heat this up and then slowly twirl it around to get something not as clear, but again, it'll be more to scale because that one's a little thin. So a lot of experimentation I'll be doing for that kind of stuff. And then again, almost every one of the feature films has caged animal. And I think so far I've seen like 3 or 4 rabbits in a cage. Now I went to the dollar store to see if I can find rabbits. Unfortunately, the best animal to scale that I can find is this thing over here that had like 4 little dogs that are kind of realistic, not too bad. And again, I would take this and I'd repaint it, dirty it up to make it more realistic. But then again, I can't use that, and they always had these cages. So I at first I was going to build a cage for this thing, and I go, that's going to be a lot of work. And again, it would be with metal rods I have, or coat hangers that where you reuse the metal, or brass rods I have. But again, that was a lot of work. And then yesterday happened to be garbage day. I'm walking around listening to my podcast and thinking about what I can do for this model, and I came upon a huge this is a small strip that I've cut out, but a huge strip of this thing. It was about like 2 feet by 1 feet, and it's basically exactly the scale I need to make a cage. So I just took a snippet over here, and with this stuff it's going to be really easy to make a cage for puppy over here, and maybe even cut it down smaller than this, whatever I need, but it'll really look realistic and cut down on the work. So hope to do that. Now again, when I'm talking about all these movies and what I'm seeing for references, I don't know if people are familiar with it, but they used to have these things where they had these glass domes with either parts or pieces of chemicals or whatever, what have you, under a dome, under like a base. And at first I remembered I had all these old bulbs that I use over here to light my setup, and I says maybe I could take one of the old burnt out ones and cut it, which I did very, very slowly with a Dremel. You basically edge it along and rub it against it really, really slow. You can't rush this. If not, this is going to break and shatter. Do wear safety glasses when you do this. And I was able to cut one over here. It's still not perfect. You sand it down afterwards, but I was happy with it. But I said, this is really, really too small. And then I remembered I had a whole bunch of test tubes upstairs. So I took one of these test tubes and again, cut it in two, filed it down over here to make it a lot smoother and straight. And again, it's a lot better. And I'm happy with that. But then I was saying, what do I put under there? I was thinking, maybe this little skeleton that I got a whole bunch of a while back, just so to use for models. But again, it's just a little too small for that. And I do have somewhere upstairs a much larger test tube. I only have one, so I'll have one crack at it. So maybe I'll try that one, and same procedure to try to cut off the tip over here and do that. Now, speaking of skeletons, again, some of the movies you'll have skeletons in the background. And I was at Walmart and I picked up this thing. I can't remember if it was $3 or $4. And what it was a dozen. I've already given a few little miniature models, if you want to call it that. It's only like 4 or 5 pieces each one. There's only a few variants in there, but they're really dinosaurs. But I figure, I can break them apart and just use rib cages, arms, legs in a setup like that, or maybe like put it together with different pieces matching from different sets and make it look kind of like a dog or a cat or something, or a rabbit. And I'll try maybe one of those and then have them somewhere in the background. Now, speaking of skeletons, on 1 or 2 occasions in the movies, he had a real, full-length skeleton in the back. And again, this thing I picked up last year at Halloween, hoping to make a miniature forgotten prisoner, from scratch. And they're not perfect, again, but they're quite realistic. I was quite surprised. And I think, just cleaning it up over here, because they put some black splotches when they molded this thing. Just cleaning it up, maybe give it a fresh paint job, I could have a realistic skeleton in the background. And, there is some flash that I would have to file off over here, but not too bad. I'm thinking if I can fit it in this little room setup I have, to use one of these. Now, other things I want to use in that setup is, again, I think I mentioned a bookcase. This is still the remnants from my bride, where I took, old medical diagrams, and, some are sepia tones, like this is the same picture. Some are just black and white, and cutting off a few and either putting them, on the table, on the floor. And one thing I did in that diagram was put in the diorama for the bride, I made a few books. And again, I went and downloaded a whole bunch of other book covers, again, vintage looking, gothic, really old textbooks, and cut out those, and I can build those and put them on a bookshelf that I want to build in this little room I want to build. Now, if that doesn't work out, a cheaper thing I can do, I guess you can call it, is basically use just a picture of books in an extended bookcase, where it's just a flat coming out of a room. And again, all these images over here, these were used for my the Nautilus submarine, and these were like in miniature, like really, really small, because there was a room in that sub. So what I've just done is made these a lot bigger, and maybe I can use some of these, including some of the gothic imagery over here. You got Shelley, Captain Nemo, Montgolfier brothers. There's and put maybe a painting on the wall, as you would normally see in that era, because I'm making more of a room, not a dirty lab. But again, when I'm thinking of the decor, you'd have that Victorian painting in there. And one thing it's almost in every one of these Jekyll Hyde movies is when he looks in a mirror and he sees himself. And so I went to the dollar store and I just picked up a cheap mirror over here that I'm gonna have to cut, and hopefully I can have that in a corner somewhere or on a wall. But the trick is to make it to scale, and that's the only thing the hard part, I guess you want to call. If I have room, I could also add a fireplace. And thinking of fireplace and the lights, I was thinking I can put a fireplace, and I can even have maybe some flickering LEDs. And again, you can get these little tea lights over here that are, you buy them and they flicker on their own. There's no circuit board in here. The circuitry is actually in the LED. And again, I use that for, again, the bride, now that I think of it. And I can do that. But I was really hoping to do is put old, gas or electric lights in the room. I was thinking, having two of them, the old style, where they have a metal base that curls around, and they're off with the wall mounts. Now the trickiest part there, I really don't have anything to use as either the bulb, if it's electric, or for the gas thing. Now I went to the old costume jewelry that you get in the dollar store where you get all these random pieces. And I was thinking at first, taking some of this stuff, put that there, and then making that bracket with this stuff over here. And what these are is just every now and then you get something delivered that's in a really, really big box, maybe a piece of furniture or a fridge or stove, and they use these giant staples. So I've saved a few because, again, they're, rectangular form factor, and they're really, they're not easy to bend, but they're very solid, and they're not that hard to bend with pliers or whatever have you. And I was thinking of making those curling brackets with something like this, but I was also hoping that I could actually maybe get an LED in there. And again, this is solid, so I can't do it with something like this, and I couldn't really find anything that I could round where I could light it up. But I had these old tubes. Actually, these are from old COVID test kits, and I was thinking of nipping off the end of this. As you can see, I can file it down to make it foggy, and maybe even put a light coat of white paint around it. And then again, this would be maybe sitting in something like this, or right on the bracket itself, and I can find a way to get an LED in there and then light it up that way. And again, even for this, if it's a gas light, it's just a flickering LED. So I would use one of these over here, which actually I could show you. See, it starts off like that, and then it starts to flicker at a random pattern. So I might use something like this, maybe even with the flame as is, I'm not sure, or maybe use this as a Bunsen burner. So again, a lot of things going on, a lot of things I'm going to be trying over here. Hopefully in the end it'll look more like a real Victorian room. I've done a lot of work on the model where I've done a lot of the a little bit of the building and a lot of the sanding down and getting rid of the seams, but the next step is to prime it and start building it. The only thing about the kit that's kind of tricky if you want to get rid of all seams like I do is he's got his jacket over here and the arms that are attached, and you can't really build everything and then paint it easily, his inner shirt and his pants. So what I'm going to do is this, the lab coat is going to be I think the only piece that after I paint it and put it all together when everything else is painted, I'll probably have to go back because the seams will be, not as nice, and go back, and once it's built, have it go back and putty it up and then repaint just those seams. But it doesn't look too bad so far. And other than that, like I'm really happy with the parts. They seem to fit quite well when I dry fit them, and it looks good. So hopefully you'll see more progress on the model in the next section I end up working with. All right, a lot of stuff going on, and let's zoom through it. So first of all, I just want to say I did watch 2 more Dr. Jekyll movies. The original 1920 with John Barrymore and the daughter of Dr. Jekyll. Again, I'm not going to go into these movies. Just watch them. They're all fantastic. So as you can see, I've made a new table over here. Again, because this one was way too small for my needs with all the stuff I want to put. And again, it has the holes where I'm going to put this sprue, which is going to be the kind of like the pipe clamp setup where you're going to have all the chemical apparatus hanging there, tubes, pipes, you name it, all that stuff. So that went well, but I did feel like a carpenter for a while. I tried to add, some Victorian detail to it, which again added to time. Everything over here on this table took a lot more time than I figured, but I'm hoping it's going to be worth it at the end. As you can see, I now have a Matryoshka doll kind of a thing with these 3 domes. Basically, after doing the test tube, I said I wanted something a little bit bigger so I can fit that skull, and it didn't fit in the second one. So I took a biggest test tube I had one upstairs, luckily, and I only had one, and it was successful. So I'm probably going to use definitely the large one, maybe the second largest one. I'm probably not going to use a small one, and I'm hoping to find a little something I can stick under there, maybe a heart, or I don't know, I'll have to do it, DIY that. Again, more work. So I did a little experiment with the rubbery string over here. You can see there's still a lot of white. This is just CA glue. I applied some wax to the tip of this glass tube so that I can slip it off after it was done, and that seemed to work. Not perfect. Again, I see those little white ridges over here, but what happens is I can rub them off. It does come off, so hopefully I'll have at least a decent tube somewhere in that setup over there. I also made sure that I could, use a marker to add some color, so when it's coming out of a bottle or something that has a red fluid, you'll see a little bit of red. So hopefully that'll work out okay. I think what came out the best was this little dog cage over here. Again, it took a long time to make this cage out of that wire mesh that I found. But I think in the end it'll look okay. I still have to paint the dog. Just want to make him, can't be a white poodle or whatever this is. So I'll have to paint him, but I think it's going to look nice. And I'm beginning to have a little space concerns when I put this whole setup all together. So he might have to go, under the table at the end. Or I might put a shelf on the bottom of, like under that, so I can put some stuff under that table if I don't have to put the dog. We'll see about that. One other thing I've worked on is the skeleton. Again, I used a heat gun so that I can take his feet and really have them hanging as they should, and kind of twist his arms a bit so that they're, side by side, not flayed out like this. So that came out okay. One good thing about this skeleton, as I worked with it, I realized that this, the black splotches are not part of the plastic. It was just kind of a paint wash that they added at the end. So I try to clean it up so that I don't have to actually paint this thing, and I think I'll be all right there. Just a little more cleanup here and there, but it does look a lot better. I put the little hook at the top over here, which now becomes, adds another question of how I'm going to have this in the diorama. And, usually these things are hanging by a stand, so I'll have to build a stand or a wall hook. I'd prefer a stand, but again, I don't know what to use. Do I use plastic? Do I use metal? The center of gravity, do I bring it down to the middle so that it'll be freestanding, or do I have it off to the side, which means it'll either have to have a heavy base or even maybe magnets to hold it down, or glued to the base of the diorama. I'll see, but I like how that's coming along. I did a little quick mirror over here, and this is just cardboard really, as a frame. Not really crazy about it, but it's a lot harder than it looks. And even if you use balsa wood, there are implications where it's hard to make it really to scale. So I'm going to see after I paint this up if it's okay to look realistic enough. And again, I need a mirror because basically every movie he's looking in a mirror, and I want him to have an effect where I can put the figure in the kit where if it's at the right angle, you'll see him from one side and the other side, because again, in the model, like one side is more Jekyll, one side a little more Hyde. So I'll see what I do with that, and also if I can make a picture frame for some Victorian picture. Now I did make a bunch of those little books over here that'll be either on the book stand or on the table. Probably gonna have try to have one opened up with some drawings, some medical drawings. Again, these things they take time. Now again, I didn't make yet a bookcase, but I think I'm going to try to make a real one. And again, it's a matter of spacing. I got to lay this all on, the baseboard that I'll be using over here, and see if I can fit all of that stuff on this thing over here in the corner, and what works best as a layout. Do I put, a fireplace or not? Now, one good thing about this fireplace, and we'll be talking about lights soon, is I took 3 of those, dollar store flickering lights, and it shows through. So I think if I do keep the fireplace and I'll have it a little extended out into the room, I could put like 3 of those flickering LEDs behind it to make it look like a flickering fireplace. At least that's the plan, if I can fit it in, if I have enough room space. One thing I haven't worked with too much, only a bit, is trying to figure out how to put all these pieces together to have these, Victorian lights in the room. And again, this would be a gas light. So, and I'm thinking of actually maybe using the flame that came with those dollar store flickering lights. And I just got to figure out how to make, a base and the angled iron to hold it. And, I found some old buttons that may be used as, like the wall plate holding all this together. But I still need a lot of work on that stuff over there. So that's the progress so far, and looking good. All right, let's see where we are over here. As you can see, that there's been some progress made, but it's been, as usual, very, very slow. First of all, I want to say I watched another movie, but this one was not good at all. So I take back what I said the last time where I said they were all good. This was the 2008 one, and again, do not watch it. Unfortunately, it was even made in my hometown, which was sad. Anyhow, I want to talk about some of the progress over here and basically how this kit broke my heart. And what I mean by that, it literally broke my heart. This is the first heart that I made to put under the dome over there. And this was just air-dried clay. And it was looking really nice until I started drilling holes to put, the veins and the aortas and arteries and things like that. And this stuff just cracked. So what I did is I took a little piece of sprue, a T-sprue, and then put some sprue glue on it, and then basically shaped another heart from scratch. Did the wiring over here. You got the aortic arch, you got some arteries, the blues, the reds, and painted it up nice and purple, and it's solid as a rock, and it looks beautiful, and under the dome she goes. And as far as these domes go, as you can see, I found some cork where I actually shaped, in some cases, some regular wine bottle cork. And I can put those under these domes. I think I'm going to trim them so that the complete dome goes in there. But if I do that, I have to make sure I have something to pull them back. So I'll have to have a separate base under that. Anyhow, not a big deal. Looks good so far. Now, I did the skeleton stand over here, and that looks pretty good. And again, it's really weighed down by some lead that I epoxied into place over there. This is not going anywhere. He'll be fine. And I just took basically, that's a wooden dowel, and this is, I think, the cap from a Dawn dishwasher soap. So again, just cut off what I didn't need over here and filled in the rest, because I needed quite a lot of area to fill in for the lead. So I specifically chose this for that. And that seems to be working fine. Now, you can see I painted, the chair and the table over there. I got some nice texturing on the chair over here. And again, this is pretty much the same technique I used for some of the other models I built, specifically the weirdo there. Anyhow, basically, you start off with yellows. Basically dry brush that, little splotches of orange, and then you go in with the browns and you streak it. So again, there's a different texture here because this is nice and flat, whereas the table is, a rougher surface, being balsa. And I did put Mod Podge at one point to clear to kind of have a little smooth, but I wanted this on purpose to be a little more rugged because that's his work table. I'm actually going to probably dirty it up with liquid spills and things like that to later on to make it look really used up and like a dirty lab. I've also, as you can see, that mesh in the back, I started playing around to see how I can hold some of the vials and bottles. And what I did is I did a sprue glue just around the neck of this thing and let it dry. I think I did 2 layers of that. And because it was sprue glue, I was able to take a piece of sprue and then just glue it on over here. And that's like a nice and solid hold that I have there. And then again, later on, I'll put these, I could put them on both sides, front, back, this way. And I'll mess around with what I want to do with the apparatus there. One thing that didn't work too well is I tried a few instances where I tried curling these hollow tubes, and even though they're not, they're see-through, but they're not clear, they're opaque, and I was just hoping to get a few nice turns of this. And basically, as I'm heating it up with a heat gun, at one point it's always going to crinkle on the corners over here. So I kind of gave up on that. I don't think I'll try. Maybe I'll give it one more shot, but it doesn't look very promising. So I'll still have to stick with all the other stuff I have. And I do have tons of other stuff to use, as I mentioned prior. And here's like something that looks like kind of a test tube also, so I'll be chopping that off and putting it somewhere on the table. And I might have some stuff under the table, and I was even thinking of something like this. This is one of those pizza box separators where I might, gouge out the middle and then put this bottle in there, and so it's kind of just a stand for this thing, and that might have to go under the table. I think it's too big for on top, but we'll see. Lots of playing around to be done in that area over there. Now, as you can see, I also started painting him just a bit. This is actually, I had some issues getting the right skin color, and I ended up getting this Mr. color over here, trying that for the first time, and it's a little light, but in this case actually I wanted to be him to be a little bit pale. So again, just starting off on that. I've got his pants done and his shoes, and it's only one of the arms, his hide hand, I guess you can say. It's got some hair on it, so started playing around with that, but still work to be done in that area. Now, the last thing that I wanted to mention, I also, when I was doing also the table, I was, painting the frames and the base of the dog crate over there. And again, I'm giving them different textures. I didn't want them all to be the same. So you can see over here, this is a darker one, this is a lighter one, and in the dog crate there, I went with the lighter one. I made a little dog bowl. I'll fill it up with some food or water later on. But the biggest thing I've had a lot of issues with, and I've spent 3 days, is working on these little lamps that I want on the side. So inside here, they got the LED that flashes. You can see that there. And yeah, you got to see it. It works once it's solid in there. It's hard to hold it, but anyhow, they're going to be the flickering lights, and that's again from dollar store tea lights they call them, and they just flicker. And what I ended up doing is I'm not using the metal base over here because I was worried if passing a wire on the side, if anything touches along the way, while I'm building it or afterwards, it's going to short out the light. So I says, let me make it in plastic. And I don't have a resin printer, but I have an FDM one. So I can't really get this nice small detail from my printer, but I know if I print things flat, it's not too bad because it is flat. So that's all going to be solid, and that's what I did. I just went and designed something really simple as a holder. Again, I wanted a little ornate over there, and enough that it's going to be something I could put on this button later on to hold it. And then I said, well, what do I do, for the LEDs? And I, thought of different ideas. And then I just took these old incandescent Christmas lights and, gutted it, cut off the glass so that the LED can fit in there, and put that in there. And then I said, I can't just have that on top of that. It needs to be a little more ornate. And I played around with a whole bunch of things that didn't quite work out. In the end, I just took something like this. It's just a spacer for a screw to hold it in a rack mount. And then I just cut off little bits of styrene all around it to give it a little more texture. And again, this is all going to be painted once it's on this base over here. And I even have some little small notches. I don't know if you can see that over there. Whoop. Probably not. Anyhow, there's little small notches so that these wires go in on the side. So hopefully that'll work out, and we can proceed to the next stage. Alright, so most of you who watch my channel know that I prefer to do one and done videos where you have a complete model build from A to Z in a single video, and you don't have to go searching around for part 1, part 2, part 3, whatever. But this Dr. Jekyll's kind of taken on a life of its own in more ways than one, and it already is too long. I've already built other things besides what you've seen in this video over here. So reluctantly, I've decided to cut this one into 2 parts. So hopefully you won't have too long to wait for the second part, which will be the final build. So coming up shortly. See you then.